Good evening, Motor Rider World fans, and welcome to another live Facebook chat. These will be coming like just about every week. I hope you're going to join us. We've got a very, very special guest lined up. Probably the most, or the bravest man on the entire planet, the man with the biggest lower region on the entire planet, because he's the fastest road racer in the entire world. Yes, of course, I'm talking about a certain British rider that has tackled just about everything there is to do in terms of superbike racing. He's a British superbike star. He's an Isle of Man TT star. He's a road racing star. He's done world superbikes. He's done it all. And of course, I am talking about a certain Mr. Peter Hickman. So joining me live now, all the way from what I hope, well, I'm pretty sure is not a sunny UK, is Mr. Peter Hickman. Hi, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you, man. Thanks for taking out the time to do this interview and chat with us. You've got a lot of fans here in South Africa, so putting this together was an absolute must. And to pull it off, just a big thanks to you, Helen, and everyone from your team for making this happen.
That's all right. No worries at all. Good to be here.
So we've got a couple of people joining in already. We're going to get some crowd interaction from some fans to ask some questions and that. Luca Jefferson, Mitchell Boys is already here. Stephen Kalgoxi is already in. Craig Hicks. So everyone is joined. There's been big hype around this interview, Peter. And I want to start with a question taking you back to a very young Peter Hickman from many years gone by. So I've been a huge Bsb fan for many years. I've had the Bsb season reviews since 2001, the DVDs. Somehow get them sent over from the UK here to South Africa. My sister lives there. She sometimes sneaks it in her bag and brings it home for me. But I remember watching, I think it was a 16-year-old Peter Hickman on a Hawk Kawasaki being lapped at Donington Park. Yeah. So now my question is, I want to know if I came up to you, that 16-year-old Peter Hickman that had just been lapped at Donington Park, and said, don't worry, you're going to be the fastest road racer in the world, a huge superstar in racing in general, a British superbike star, Isle of Man TT winner, a world superbike racer, what would you have said to me?
I don't really know, if I'm totally honest. I probably would have just laughed at you. Yeah, it's been a bit of a long road, really, to get to where I am now. And I have been around the paddock a long, long time. It's my first British Superbike race was 2006. And I raced inside the British Superbike paddock before then. So from 2004, I did British Superstock or National Superstock Cup, and then the National Superstock main race in 2005. So yeah, I've been around a long time, but it took a while to get onto a bike that was capable. You know, I actually think the championship overall nowadays is a lot fairer. You know, the cost is always a problem in motorsport. It is for any form of motorsport, especially when you're getting towards the top level. And bikes are no different. They're nowhere near cars, but they're still, you know, it's a lot of money. You look at all the British Superbike teams that are at the front of the championship, they're spending £1 million a year plus to run a two-rider team. So it's still big enough money. But at the time, you know, there was different manufacturers of tyres. There was lots of differences between top teams and small teams. Whereas now, with the way the championship is, everything's quite fair. You know, that even the small teams, even if they don't have the budgets, their bikes are very similar, if not the same, as what the bikes are at the front. And it made a huge difference back then. You know, 18 years ago, about 15 years ago now. You know, it was a big difference. You know, I remember that, you know, I was riding on, I started the year complete nobody, obviously. But until I scored a point, I didn't get the next grade of tyre. And then once I scored a point, I would then get the next grade of tyre, but I'd only get 2 or 3 of them. So then I had to save them for like one qualifying lap and then the 2 races, or maybe you just saved them for the races completely. And they were so different. And then once I scored a point and got that tyre, then when I got my first top 10, I got the next tyre again. But how are you meant to beat these other people unless you're already on what they're on? You know, it was a very hard, not that it's any different now, it was a very hard championship to ride in. Now, of course, the level is still very, very high, but everybody gets the same. Everyone gets the same tyres. Everyone gets the same electronics. Yes, you've still got to set your bike up. Yes, you still need somebody who's electronically very advanced and understands what the bike's doing, and there's all sorts of little tricks you can and can't do. You know, you need somebody who actually knows that. But apart from that, the bikes are very similar and the teams are very similar, which means that anybody, as long as they've got talent, can actually get to the front and win races.
I was going to ask you about Bsb. I mean, if I look back in those days, British Superbikes has somehow managed to just keep this high level from when I started watching it till now. I mean, we've had you guys have had riders. You've had Hager come in. You've had Loris Baz come in. You've had all these big names come in and shine on certain days, but not really do much. What makes it so difficult for MotoGP and World Superbike stars to come into Bsb and not really perform on the same level as you local British guys? Is it more adapting to the bikes? Because especially now in modern day, there's no electronics on the bikes and anything. They're pretty much, off the showroom floor with a couple of mods. Or is it just those hard demanding tracks and track knowledge?
I think it's a bit of both. Definitely the no electronics rule has changed things a lot since 2012. I think that came in. The big bikes are very, very different to ride without the electronics. And I think people don't realize just how much electronics are going on with standard bikes nowadays. So even from the super stock class to the superbike class, where they're allowed to use kit electronics, even if you turn the traction control off and anti-wheelie control off, there's still a lot of background stuff going on, which means the bike is a lot softer and a lot easier to ride than what it would be without it. When you put the Motec system on that we run on in BSB, you have zero. There is nothing in the background helping you. There's nothing to just save you if you make a slight mistake. And we've had riders even recently. Marcus Reiterberger came over towards the end of last year and was my teammate for one race. He could not believe the difference. Even though I told him before he came, I was like, look, you really need to be careful about how you approach this weekend, because you're not going to believe how much the difference is. And I don't think he believed me. I think he just thought I was trying to wind him up. And then when he got there and rode the bike and he set it up how he would normally ride a bike, a BM, he'd ridden, Marcus is very, very fast. He's a very class rider. And, he's finished top 6 in World Superbike before. He knows what he's doing. But he set the bike up how he thought it should be set up. It wouldn't even work. And I was like, it's because of the electronics. The bike won't do what you think it will do. It's completely different. So that is definitely a big element. Riders can get around that, of course. But then the next problem is the circuits are very different to Europe in particular, or the rest of the world. I know America's got some really kind of tracks similar to ours. But apart from that, there isn't really anywhere like Britain, with the way that not only the tracks are, but the surfaces as well. The surface isn't very, very grippy particularly. So it makes the bikes hard to ride. So yeah, I think there's a big challenge for anybody coming from anywhere other than growing up on the tracks around here. It's very, very difficult.
I think it's got a double-edged sword though, because I know in South Africa we've also got tight, twisty, short, narrow tracks. We've got one or two wide, open ones, but we grew up on short, narrow tracks. You're taught to brake and turn, because if you don't brake and turn, you don't make the corner. So while it hampers the MotoGP guys and World Superbike guys coming to your tracks, it must hamper you guys going to these big, fast-flowing Mugellos and Brunos, and now you've all of a sudden got a lot of track to play with. And so how's it for you adapting to now, when you did World Superbikes, okay, you did Donington and that tracks you knew, but how is it for you to adapt to a bike that now has electronics? You can pretty much, hammer the bike and let it do its own thing, and to now deal with these wider tracks.
The tracks thing, I don't find so much of a problem. I think going that way rather than the other way is definitely a lot easier. If you go into a big wide open circuit, you just got more tarmac to use, so you can just use it. I think it's more difficult coming the other way. If you're used to big wide open tracks and then come to a narrow track, then I think that's more difficult. Electronics wise is a bit of everything. It can make the bike easier to ride, but you also need to concentrate a lot of time and effort on how to make them electronics work for you the best that they can be. Because if you get it even slightly wrong, your pace just won't be there. And I feel that you end up spending a lot of the weekend chasing electronic setup rather than bike setup. Whereas in the UK, with the way the BSB rules are with no electronics, it's almost the other way around. You spend a lot more time concentrating on chassis and getting the bike to work properly, rather than trying to sort out electronics. So definitely it will come down a lot to what team and what people you have around you. I think that will make more of a difference. When I did the World Superbike round at Donington, the team was good. The team was spot on. For me, what held me back was the electronics. I didn't. even though I had, I'd ridden bikes with electronics before, I still didn't have full, complete trust just to open the throttle on the side of the tire. And also I couldn't get the electronics, or I couldn't get the way I was trying to express what I wanted to change. I couldn't get them to do it in the way I wanted them to do it, probably because they didn't understand me so much and I didn't understand them so much. But it was just not quite there. And it was still very early days for that bike at the time as well. Bear in mind, that was in 2019. The BM S1000RR had only just been out. I've literally a couple of months. We'd only had our bike, I think, 2 months at that point. So, the World Superbike team was still learning themselves. And I gave them all the input I could give them. We never quite got what I wanted back out of it. But at the same time, I qualified fourth. I nearly qualified front row. I missed out by next to nothing on a front row, which would have been absolutely awesome. I finished seventh in the first race on the Saturday, and I had a good weekend. It was good, but you always want more. You as a racer, you definitely always want more. It doesn't matter how good a weekend you've had, you just want more.
Yeah, no, that's what separates you, the boys, from the men, they should say. I'm going to go to some fan questions here. Jimmy Dean, hi Peter. Now you're no longer with the Smiths BMW team. How do you think you will get on in the BSB series this year? And are you looking forward to fans returning?
Absolutely, definitely looking forward to fans returning. It's a big part, especially the British Championship. Again, if no one's ever been, then you need to get over and come and have a look. BSB just has so many fans. Certain rounds we have upwards of 50,000 people there, which makes for the atmosphere absolutely unreal. And not having that last year was, for me as a rider, was not good. I like that atmosphere. I like that push. I like that, not pressure, but it just brings a different element to the race. For me, not being with the Smiths team yet, it's going to be a big change for me. I've been with Smiths for 4 years, but a lot of the team that are inside of the FHO Racing BMW team, a lot of the personnel have come from the Smiths Racing team. So there's a lot of people around me. I've still got the same crew chief. I've still got the same electronics guy. I've got my same number one mechanic. So there's a lot of people there that I already know and already work with really, really well. So for me, it's going to be hopefully quite an easy transition across.
Well, you say that, but you have now the first official woman, a BSB team owner. How has that been? Is she like the wife figure, like my wife, that just says blah, 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 or how's that been so far?
So far, so good. We did have Rebecca obviously ran the Smiths Racing team, although her dad technically owned it, or her family owned it, whereas obviously Faye is the sole owner of the FHO Racing team. So we definitely haven't had any telling offs just yet, but I think we're all waiting for it.
I'm sure it's coming. It's got to come. You've got a new teammate as well, Javi Flores, who's come now from World Superbike. He's been in BSB before. One of those riders that had flashes of brilliance. Going to be interesting working with him, a World Superbike rider as well.
Yeah, I actually knew Chavi before he came to BSB the first time. So I'd met him the year before, a mutual friend's wedding, actually, and got on with him really, really well. Then when he came to BSB, I guess I was one of the few riders who actually knew who he was. And he's a fantastic rider. Got on with him really, really well. He's got very, very good technical knowledge. And actually, I think he's going to be a big asset to the team. Even for me as a rider, obviously the first person that you want to beat is your teammate, of course. But it's also good to have a very fast teammate. Because if you've got a fast teammate, and all our data is going to be shared between us all anyway, it doesn't matter who's faster or what's going on. All the data is always going to be shared between us all, because at the end of the day, we're a team and we need to get to the front together. It's going to be, for me, I've always asked for a fast teammate. I don't care if they beat me to start with. I need to learn myself. I want to understand if someone's faster than me. At least if I'm getting to see their data, then I can understand where I need to improve myself. And I think with Chavi, with his feedback already, we've done one test together and he was fantastic straight from the off. So really looking forward to working with him properly and getting the team right to the front where they should be.
Okay, now obviously you're chatting to a South African and South Africans in this country. So we ask the questions we want to ask. So Stephen Berry asks, how do you fit those huge balls in your leathers?
I just get some specially made ones. It's all right.
Good. Yeah, that's a good answer. Second question from him. How do you feel missing 2 years worth of TT, possibly 3 to 4 victories missed out on?
Yeah, it's been it's tough, but there's nothing I can do about it, so there's no point bawling and crying about it. It is what it is. It's disappointing. I feel it's hit, without trying to be a big head, it's kind of hit myself probably one of the hardest, because I'm at the point where I'm actually starting to win. You know, the last 2 years of the TT, I started actually winning races. I won 5 races from the last 2 years that it ran, and the next 2 years I'm not allowed to run. You know, I'm like, there's only so much time you can win for, and that has been taken away, or at least it's been shortened by at least 2 years for me. So it's going to be interesting going back and see who gets along with it faster or easier. To be honest, I don't think much is going to change from a rider point of view. I think the riders who were fast already are still going to be fast. I don't think the lap times are going to be much different. Most of us have all kept racing anyway, and it's just a new bit of tarmac, you know. And anybody who was fast there already, they already understand and know that, you know, have the circuit knowledge to go fast. So whether it's been 2 or 3 years by the time we get back there, and it'll be 3 years for me if it runs next year, then you know, because a lot of the guys do the classic, but I don't. It'll be 3 years since I've turned a wheel around there, so it's a long time. But at the same time, I've not been to Phillip Island for 3 years, and if I went back there now, I know where I want to brake, I know what gear I want to be in. So within a session or two, I'll be somewhere near.
Okay, then the third and final question there from Stephen is: did you ever find out what caused the overheating issue on the BMW in the 2019 Senior?
Yeah, so there's always a lot of misinformation on this. The bike didn't overheat. That wasn't the problem. The problem was it kept throwing water out without overheating, which normally normally a bike would throw water out if it's overheating. It wasn't. It would throw the water out and then it would overheat. So we couldn't get it to keep the water in. We did eventually figure it out about a week, maybe 2 weeks after the TT. We did figure that out. It was just too late, you know, and it didn't help. We had no practice that week. I did 2 laps on that bike before the first race. It didn't go the way we wanted it to go. We'd struggled at the Northwest with it for the exact same problem. I'm not going to go into exactly what it was. It was something that we were doing, but it was because of what had changed on the bike from the previous year. So it wasn't necessarily a mistake. It was just something that we did that ended up not being right for this model of bike.
Okay, so some comments here. Scott Redding did okay in BSB. Yeah, that's one exception there for sure. AJ Fenter, our TT star here in South Africa, he says, how's it, guys?
Hey, AJ.
Yeah, Stephen Berry, Rob Reed, my question, Stephen, I've answered that question. So my next question to you now, Peter, is you've decided to do the TT. You phone your mom, your dad, your wife, your sister, your brother, and you say, listen, guys, I'm going to go do the TT. How did that go?
Well, I was always told right from being a kid. I mean, my dad didn't want me to race bikes anyway, even though he raced himself. So I bought my own bike when I was 12 without telling him. I saved my pocket money up for about a year and hid it around the back of the house, and that's how that started. He then decided he was going to help. If I was going to do it anyway, he wanted to help me in the right direction. So he's been by my side ever since with one rule, and that was that I never went road racing. So I raced from kind of 14 years old onwards. So I'd had a bike for a couple of years before I went racing. I was 27 when I first went to the TT. My birthday's in April, so when I was 26 at the time, I'd had a real average year again in BSB. I didn't have a BSB ride for the following year for the first time since I'd started, really. Really struggling. No team would take me on unless I had a big checkbook. I've never had a big checkbook. So I was in a bit of a predicament of what do I want to do. I'd actually been to the TT in 2013 just to watch. You know, I know John McGuinness, I know Michael Rutter, I know quite a few of the guys. So I've been to watch. I'd actually ridden some laps just on a road bike and really enjoyed myself. Had a right laugh with a few mates for only 3 or 4 days. Just loved the whole atmosphere of it. And then I wanted to keep racing. That was my big thing, is I wanted to keep racing. How can I keep racing without having to drop back to club level, where it would be probably pointless for me because I'd be able to win races fairly easily. There's no challenge. You know, I wanted to keep racing and I needed a challenge. So the next thing really was to look at doing the TT in the Northwest, and was probably just going to leave it at that. Was going to do it on a very low key thing, just a super stock bike. So telling my parents, I actually took them out for a meal, so they knew something was wrong straight away because I invited them out. And then said, look, I'm actually going to go over to the island and do the TT, you know. So and they actually took it okay. They were all right. Again, I was 26 at the time, just about to turn 27, so there wasn't much they could necessarily say to me. They could maybe not talk to me ever again, but no, they've been awesome, to be honest. And all my friends and family all around me, everyone who's been close has been absolutely mega and fully supportive of everything that I've ever done, really, to be honest. I've been very, very lucky in that way.
So how does the road racing compare to BSB track stuff, and how do you mentally and physically adjust from the tight, twisty BSB sprint, races to long open road, wall and animal infested roads? I mean, it's got to be it's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is very different, but you're still riding a bike. You're still two wheels. It's still an engine. It's still a piece of tarmac. Going from short circuit, which is very fast and frantic, very late on the brakes. You ride right on the edge of crashing all the time, every corner for the whole 20 lap or 30 lap race, whatever it may be. That is a very hard style of riding to be able to do, and to do at the level that BSB is at. And there's not many people that can do it. When you go to the roads, yes, it's still very, very fast, and there are still very fast riders there, but it's a different style of riding, generally because of the nature of the course, not necessarily because it's more dangerous, because you still go flat out through some of the corners that you need to go flat out at. That doesn't really make any difference. But what does make a big difference is the nature of the track, especially TT, places like Ulster Grand Prix. Northwest is slightly different. So the Northwest is a bit more late braking because of the way the track is. Again, it's because it's all chicanes, and that's why you see a lot of the short circuit riders do really well at the Northwest, but not necessarily in other places, or they don't even go to other places. That's because Northwest is quite safe for what it is. And it's all about late braking, which you can do. If you're a good short circuit rider, you'll be fine at the Northwest, no problem at all. When you go to the TT, it's more about circuit knowledge, and it's more about your corner exit than it is about your corner entry. So you could gain half a second on the brakes maybe by braking really late and on the absolute limit, but what you would then gain going in, you would lose coming out, because you need your exit speed. So if you rush in, you're slow out. So you're much better to lose half a second going in, but gain 2 seconds on the next mile straight. So because it's that style of riding, I feel very, very relaxed when I race at the TT, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, I know, and people don't always believe me, but I genuinely feel like I take 2 steps back when I get to the TT, and I'm still fast. So I go into almost a relaxed mode of riding. I still push hard. It's a really difficult thing to describe. I still feel like I ride at 100%, but it's just a different type of 100%. I still just push the little bits here and there, and there's definitely a lot of corners that I can use a short circuit style on, and I definitely make time there on a lot of the other riders that can't do that. But as a general rule, I feel like I really do take a step or 2 back from where I normally ride at BSB. And when I go back to BSB, normally straight away the weekend after, it's very difficult. It's very hard. You feel like you're going 10 miles an hour all the time. You never feel like you're going fast enough because you've been used to doing 190 for most of the TT. I would say 95% of the lap at the TT is over 160 miles an hour. Whereas on a short circuit, you'll reach maybe 170, maybe 180, but for a very, very short period of time. Most of the track will be around 100 miles an hour. So that difference, when you're riding the bike, you hit the brakes either too late or too early, and you're all out of sync all the time. So it takes a good couple of days really to get back into a short circuit style after being at the TT.
I was going to ask that because I see Dean Harrison now the last couple of years as full-time BSB, and he's become your biggest challenger now at the TT. So, I mean, clearly, if you can get the best of both worlds, you become a Peter Hickman and you can win TT and be competitive in BSB. And I think that's what Harrison is trying to do, and it looks to be working.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's his short circuit work and coming to BSB. He might not be finishing at the front, but his lap times have been really, really strong. There's not a lot of difference between the front guys and the back guys anyway. He's been scoring good points in the last year in 19, and his riding's just come on more and more and more. And because his riding's got faster when he's got to the TT, he's become faster. So, and you've seen quite a few of the riders. Hutchie's now been doing some more super stock. Lee Johnston's been doing pretty super sport. It's all for the same reason. I'm not going to say that I'm the reason, but because I was at the front of BSB and the front of roads, people are going, we need to do more riding. We need to do more riding. Where do we need to go? We need to go and do BSB. And over the last few years, that's definitely been a trend for quite a few of the riders.
So we've got a question from someone here, and it's actually going to be a two-part question from the fan. I'm just trying to find it here, and myself. So he was asking, are we going to see you back at the TT in the Trooper colors, which are just iconic now? They really are amazing. But that is the one question. The second part of my question is, with the cancellation this year, hopefully you'll be back next year. Are the plans to be with the team that you're currently in Bsb with to be in TT, or you haven't even discussed that yet?
Trooper-wise, I certainly hope so. I get on with the guys really, really well, both from the actual band themselves with Bruce and the boys, and also the management, obviously, which is who I actually deal with mainly for the sponsorship side of things with Trooper. Get on with them really well. They were all well up for 2020, and then obviously everything all went wrong. So my honest answer is I don't know, but I'm fairly confident they'll be up for doing something. Also, the alcohol industry and the pop industry, if you like, or rock industry has had a real, or music industry, I should say, has had a real kick in the teeth over the last couple of years, as most kind of sectors of business have. I certainly hope they're going to be up for it. I'm pretty sure they will, but that discussion hasn't happened yet. And the same really for which team to be with for next year. I'd love to stay in this team, but we've not even started this year yet. So again, I would love to stay with this team. I think we can build on this year. It's not, Faye hasn't got a 1 year plan. She's got like a 3 or 5 year plan, which is awesome. Awesome for the sport, not just for us that are involved right now, but in general. Great that somebody like that is putting that amount of commitment into the sport, because we need it. We're a small sport really in the grand scheme of things. So for her to say, yeah, I'm going to do 3 to 5 years is absolutely mega. I would love to stay with the team, of course, but let's get this year out of the way, or at least half of this year out of the way, before we start making any decisions.
Right, and another question here from Brink Heinemann. How difficult is it to set up the bike for the TT versus the track? I mean, is it literally a case of taking your Bsb bike, putting electronics back on it, and taking it to the TT, or is it two completely different ball games? And like, what is the difference with the suspension setup and ergonomics and your pegs and everything?
Not as much as what you'd think. In 19 and 18, I'm trying to think now, 17 as well, I've actually ran basically a Bsb bike. In 19, it was my actual Bsb bike, and I have done that in previous years as well, mainly because we didn't have time to build another bike in 19. That was the big problem. So it ran on Motogp. It ran with no electronics whatsoever. It was a full-blown super bike, exactly as it was from Bsb the weekend before. The only difference being tyres, because you can run whatever tyres we want, and I'm a Dunlop supported rider and brand ambassador as well for Dunlop. So I run on the Dunlop tyres, and to be honest, changes, not a lot. Handlebars are the same, foot pegs were the same. The team go through the bike a little bit more with a fine tooth comb, things like lock wiring, extra things, just to make sure the bolts can't fall out. Bit of silicone on a lot of the threads of the bolts, just because the bikes get an absolute hammering, just like the rider does around the TT. And for 226 miles for one race, it's a long way, in an hour and 45 minutes. We need that bike to hold itself together, and it's got to do 2 weeks of it. So yeah, kind of belt and braces thing on the bike, but the actual bike itself is very, very similar. Ergonomics stay the same, like I say, foot pegs, handlebars, all that kind of stays. The tank's slightly bigger, but to be honest, the last few years the team's done a great job. I've not even noticed the tank being any different. They've just kind of moved it under the seat more. Normally run slightly bigger windshield or a screen, just to try and hide, especially somebody like myself who's tall, just to try and get behind the screen a little bit more. But in fact, I don't think we did in 19. I think it was the Superbike screen. Electronics wise is very similar, apart from we're trying to save as much fuel as possible, because to make 2 laps on 24 litres is very, very tight for a Superbike now. So we're always trimming fuel and trying to run the bike as lean as we dare without doing too much damage to it. An actual position of the bike in suspension, next to nothing. We tend to run the bike a bit higher overall, so the whole bike a little bit up, just because of the big jumps that we've got to do and the big compressions. Trying to keep the engine off the floor, as daft as that sounds, but basically trying to keep the engine off the floor, so you don't smash it into the ground and break the sump. But yeah, it wasn't really any different. Maybe a stage lighter on springs, maybe slightly softer on compression, but we're not talking a lot. We're talking a click or two. And like I say, one stage softer on the spring. So if you were 10.5s in the front the weekend before, we might be 10.25 for the TT. You still need the support. You can't just make it a soft, sloppy bike. It needs the support, especially with them big compressions and stuff. But the biggest thing for me for TT is as long as you've got a stable bike, generally speaking, you're all right. If you can't hang on to it and the thing's trying to fishtail everywhere and shake its head everywhere, you'll never be able to ride the bike properly. So as long as you can make the bike stable, generally you can do what you want on the TT.
And I was going to talk about the Dunlop tires. I mean, it seems to be the tire of choice at the TT from Superstock to the big superbikes. And I know just from a journalist point of view, just testing, your Pirelli is your ultimate go fast track tire. The Dunlop's not far off, especially like the D213s that you guys run in Superstock, but it's a more stable, solid tire. So it's a tire that's got the grip, but it's got that sidewall and center stability. Do you think that's ultimately what makes it so good around the TT?
I think it's definitely one of the reasons it's good at the TT, yeah. Dunlop have a lot of experience of what they want to do and how they want to do it. And it's not always about having the absolute ultimate amount of grip and speed initially, because normally if you do that, then it runs out. You can't make it last for the whole time. TT is an endurance. It's 38 miles round for argument's sake. So it's, 76 miles for 2 laps. You can't do that with a really sticky, really grippy tire, because it will be ace for the first 15 miles and then it will just go downhill. So it's about having the speed over the 2 laps and keeping the speed is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And Dunlop have managed that over the last few years in particular, much, much better. I really struggled, and I still do to a point on the first lap. That's a lot more down to me, but also because we weren't getting the tire to get it up to temperature quickly enough from the rear. And then in 18, after the first Superbike race, I complained about it, and I know a few of the others complained about it, and they brought a different tire for the senior, and we practiced on it. I did a 1-lap practice on it on the Wednesday night, and 100% was way, way better, and that's what we used again in 19. And that improved myself as well as some of the other guys from a standing start, because the Pirelli or the Metzeler is what they use on when you road racing, they're really strong from the off. And we see it in Macau all the time. I'm just about to put up a Macau video on my YouTube, Hicky60, from 2015 when I won my first Macau, and you'll watch Martin Jessup go off the start, and he absolutely obliterates me on the first lap. He actually pulls a 2-second gap on lap 1, mainly because, not mainly because obviously he was riding really strong, but the tires for him, he just felt like he was up to temperature. He got the grip and he just went. Whereas for me, the first lap, I was a bit like, wow, I'm not entirely confident with where I want to be. And I was in second position. I could still see him, but he was just pulling away so much. And I just wanted to give it another lap before I went, right, I'll get my head down. Now the bike's starting to feel good. Let's get going. So yeah, the differences in tires makes such a difference, more so than what people realize.
So you were talking about like the fuel and running to like literally fumes. Is it a case of the same as MotoGP, where you start the lap with a less power mode and then once you're comfortable, full power mode, or are you full power mode from when you leave to the finish?
Yeah, just full all the way. But again, through practice, the team will work out what the bike is using, and they'll be trimming where they can to try and save a bit of fuel. So normally whenever we shut the throttle, they'll just turn all the fuel off. Whereas normally on a short circuit, you'd have a bit of fuel still going in to help with the engine braking strategy and all the rest of it. For the roads, you just don't bother. You just shut it off completely and save it wherever you can. And then you need to work out where you want to put it back in just before we open the throttle, so then it's not too lean when you come back on the gas. Otherwise, the bike will be really aggressive. So it's definitely a bit of an art to it. And the guys I've got working around me, Pete Clifford, who does all my electronics, he's been bang on the last couple of years in particular. I mean, in 18, when we did the lap record lap, 135 mile an hour lap, I literally finished the race. I cruised up the return road, obviously high-fiving everyone down the return road, which is always pretty cool. Did a little burnout, nothing major, just did a little burnout. We did all the photographs, did all the podium stuff. The bike then goes straight to the dyno. It only got to third gear. So they started it and went first, second, third, and then it ran out. And they had to go and get more fuel to put it in so they could actually dyno the bike properly. So that's how close we are with fuel.
Jeez, John, if he gets it wrong, everyone's going to shout at him.
Absolutely.
Craig Hicks asks here, we've just seen Michael Dunlop take part in the Daytona 200. Is that something that you would look at?
Yeah, I've been wanting to do Daytona for so long. Every year I'm trying to ask the team, whichever team I've been with, I've been trying to get them to go to do it or allow me to go and do it. It's never happened. Obviously, I've not been yet, but yeah, I absolutely want to do it. When I saw he was doing it, I was gutted. I was like, I've been wanting to do that for years. I've not had the chance, but fingers crossed, one day it will happen. And yeah, I'd love to go and do it. I know there's not a massive amount of crowd there, but it's still an iconic race, and it's still something I'd love to tick off my list.
Scott Clark's asked here, and it's a question I was going to ask you. What is your favorite circuit and why in the Bsb paddock?
I don't really have a favorite. It's difficult to say. I could put some cones out in the car park out here and have a ride around, and I'll be quite happy. You know, as long as I'm riding bikes, I don't really care. And every circuit has a good or bad point about it. I think also if you have favorites, you're always going to go well there, and you'll never go as well in other places. Especially it works the other way. If you have I really dislike this particular track, you'll never really have a good result there. There's definitely tracks that I tend to go better on than others. Thruxton being one, which is interesting because it's a really fast, ballsy track. And I've been fast there right from being a kid. So when I first ever went, in fact, the weekend, I only did one weekend there as a kid, and I broke the lap record, and I still technically hold the lap record because they've not been back since on a 1:25 Aprilia Super Team. And that was my first year I'd ever been there, and I've always been fast at Thruxton. I don't know why. And interestingly enough, obviously all the road races are big, ballsy, fast tracks, and obviously I'm fast on them as well. So it must be just something in my nature that I like about it. But then having said that, Cadwell Park, which isn't particularly a fast track, but is very technical and very difficult and very narrow and lots of braking, lots of changes of direction, I've generally always been fast there as well. So yeah, I tend to just like riding bikes. I don't really care. My normal answer to this question when I get asked it, at least during the season, is whatever's next on the calendar.
So a couple of people are asking the same question, and I had the same question down as well. What is your favorite part of the TT, and what is the part where you go, okay, just close my eyes and hope to make it through?
Similar kind of answer, really. I normally say start line to the finish line. That's my favorite section. It's all good, you know. It's there's a lot of the sections are very, very difficult. You know, the run from Ginger Hall in particular to Ramsey, where it's so bumpy, and there's a nicer line sometimes, but no matter where you go, it's very, very bumpy and difficult. But if I was going to have to choose somewhere, I would say Kurt Michael. Kurt Michael's just an awesome place to ride through. It really makes you feel like you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. Doing 170 mile an hour through the village, through the houses, both sides. It's yeah, it's really, really cool. It always makes me laugh when I go through there. So I would say Kurt Michael.
And then I don't know honestly how you do it. Another question that a lot of guys have asked you, and Peter McBride put it on our Facebook page during the week, and it's a really cool question. Can you ask him who would be on his Mount Rushmore of TT riders?
Who would be my favourites? Difficult. Yeah. You know, there's a good group of guys now at the TT. I think anyone outside, inside, the top 10 are all capable of winning one way or another. So it's tough, you know. But all them names that everyone kind of knows, from Connor Cummins, Dean Harrison, Lee Johnston, all the way back to kind of 8th, 9th, 10th. Any of them really are capable. If they're capable of going that fast, then they're capable of winning, you know. So I think it's really tough to pick your top 3 if you were going to try and do it.
So what are the emotions like on a TT week? I mean, you've got to, you know, obviously smile and wave for the cameras, but I mean, do you get sleep? Do you eat, or do you just spend most of your time in the toilet?
Oh no, I'm definitely not a nervous rider. I never have been.
Really?
Yeah, like it's the best example of this, I guess. Really, most riders can't sleep, especially before before the big races. In 2018 for the senior, I got woken up by the sidecars setting off down Glen Crutchley Road. So I was flat out asleep, and the sidecars set off at 11:15 in the morning. So that's how chilled out I am about the whole situation. But yeah, I could actually genuinely eat my dinner on the start line before setting off. It really doesn't bother me whatsoever. I'm just, I don't know, I'm just, I guess, my normal self, whatever normal is. I'm out and about and seeing people. I'm always signing stuff and doing photographs and always in with the team and just not really looking over the bikes, but just being involved with the team and being involved with the boys and girls in the team. And, you know, I always try and take them out for some dinner somewhere, at least a few times over the week, over the 2 weeks that we're there. We always try and do a barbecue or something, and always having get-togethers and really just trying to, you know, bond as a team. You know, these are the people that are looking after me, so I need to look after them. So I'm always trying to do stuff to say thank you, really, I guess, more than anything.
Dan Milton asks, who is your favorite rider to ride against, both in Bsb and road racing? And there's a couple of parts to this question, because I was going to ask who's your favorite Motogp rider, World Superbike rider, and who's that one rider that if you're in a battle with on track, or you see your pit board saying this guy's behind you, go, oh, for fuck's sake, this time again. So yeah, who's your favorite Motogp rider? Who's your favorite World Superbike rider? Who's your favorite rider to race with? And who's that rider that you just go, oh, please no?
There's a few of them. Favorite MotoGP rider, unfortunately, is a bit of a boring answer. It's Valentino. I think, you know, everything that he's done. He gets called a lot nowadays. I see it, like, especially on social media. I'm really surprised at what people actually think, and they're saying, "Oh, he should be retiring." Why should he be retiring? He's, you know, he's more than capable of still winning. So why should he retire? I don't get it. But you know, I think he's very flamboyant. He's been awesome for the sport, and he's, what is he, 10-time world champion? He's, yeah. What more do you need to say? You know, he's got absolutely nothing to prove. I'm really hoping he's going to win some races this year and kind of give the doubters a good up yours. But we'll find out sooner or later, won't we? World Superbike. Can I choose someone from the past, or does it have to be right?
All time, your all-time favorite beer. So, like, my favorite World Superbike rider of all time has got to be Troy Bayliss. But yeah, all-time favorite World Superbike rider.
I would say I'm going to go with Colin Edwards. I've now known Colin for a good few years, and he's such a cool guy. You know, I get on with him really, really well, and he is exactly the person that you see on TV. So whoever you see on TV, that is exactly how he is in real life. And I remember watching, you know, even as a kid, I was watching World Superbikes. Obviously, I was around the paddock even as a kid, even though my dad didn't want me riding. And yeah, he's just a cool dude. So I'm going to go with Colin. I love his style as well. It's so different to everyone else on the grid. Before you answer the toughest rider and most hated rider to race against, you recently went to Colin Edwards's that camp that he does. I mean, how was that? Yeah, I've been for a few years now. I did 5 years in a row. In fact, this year was the first time I've actually missed one. I even did it last year, but his boot camp that he does is awesome. If anyone's never been and is thinking about it, you need to do it. He is just the whole place is just awesome. It's a week away. You get to ride bikes, shoot guns, drink beer, and it's all included in the price. Like, what more could you ask for? It's just a really, really cool week. And yeah, to be honest, I don't ever see a time that I'll not be going back. You know, I'll always be going there. It's actually real good training as well for myself. Bit of flat track. They're only small bikes, TTR 125s, but just really easy to ride. And the skill set that you use for that is very, very similar to what we use for racing. So I always find it's a real good start. It almost kickstarts my year. The start of the year is going to boot camp and having a week away and getting on the plane with a few of the lads. And like last year, I took most of the team with me, so there was about 15 or 18 of us. It was just awesome, absolutely awesome. So he was, yeah. If anyone's thinking of doing it, go and do it. Right. So then your favorite, your most enjoyable rider to race with at TT and BSB, and then that rider that you just like, please no. Most enjoyable, I don't really know who I'd choose, to be fair. I mean, for road racing, do you know what? Everyone's very respectful. Everyone's pretty good. You know, it's for obvious reasons. We've all got a lot of respect for each other, and because of that, everyone, generally speaking, is pretty respectful. Don't get me wrong. There's been the odd time that somebody's done a close pass, and I've done the same. You know, I've made a slight mistake and gone, phew, that was close. And normally, I give a little wave. I did a pass on Dean in 17 or 18 up at Pullett's Gate, and I thought I'd made it really clean. And I thought he'd seen me early enough, and he hadn't. You know, and it's like 190 mile an hour through there, and I lifted him at 190 mile an hour, and he had to really kind of use all the road. And I was like, mate, I am really sorry. That was not my intention. I thought I'd made it clean, and it maybe wasn't as clean as what I thought. But generally speaking, for the roads, everyone's pretty good. Who do I really enjoy riding with? Even at BSB, you know, there's definitely some really hard riders. You get to race. You get to race with everyone. I think that's the big thing with BSB. It's not like you find yourself weekend in, weekend out racing with the same guy. There's always somebody new, and there's such a mix all the time. It's difficult. The races that I think, oh fuck, is there's a few. There's quite a few. You know, I always find Christian Idden's really difficult to ride with. Not because he does anything wrong as such. He's always just very close to the knuckle with his passes, which is fine. That's just how he is. But you know, he's a hard rider to ride against. Tommy Bridewell's the same. You know, they're very ruthless with the way that they ride and the way that they take moves and stuff. And yeah, I think whenever you realize they're behind you, it's always a bit of a oh shit moment. You know, they're gonna have a go whether there's a gap there or not.
Yeah, I know that feeling. We've had a couple of those in South Africa as well, where you can hear them. You don't even have to look at your pit board; you just know it's them behind you. Slade Funny Cag's got an awesome question here. Would you rather be known as the greatest road racer of all time or the greatest circuit racer of all time?
Oh,
it's a tough one.
I don't know. Yeah, it is a tough one. I mean, you know, I always see myself as a BSB rider. I always say, you know, if someone says, oh, you know, what do you want to do this year? I'm like, I want to be a BSB champion. Having said that, the TT is just so massive and so global. You know, it's the single biggest motorsport event in the world, bar none. You know, it beats everything hands down as a single event. Yeah, difficult. I think having the TT title in particular is definitely something very, very special. And there's not many people that can actually say, yeah, I've raced the TT. And then there's even less that have said, I've not only raced it, but I've won it. And I've won on the Superstock bike, I've won on the Superbike, I've won the senior race, and I've won the Supersport race. So yeah, it's you know, I've been quite diverse with the wins that I've had, which is cool, you know. And again, there's not that many people that can say that either. So, you know, winning on different capacity of bikes and different manufacturers of bike, it's it's tough. So yeah, I guess I'll have to go with the TT.
Yeah, Rossi can keep his 9 MotoGP titles. You've won the TT. So bugger him. Nico Jonk asks a good question. What was it like when you your first ever lap around the TT, kind of in anger? Like you said, you did a production bike a couple of times, but that first time you climbed on your superbike and now you had to do this like fast and at pace. I mean, that must have just been. We watched these onboards of you on climbing on HP4 BMWs and going first time out, and you just go balls to the wall from the word go. But I mean, how was that first time? I mean, it must have been just completely eye-opening.
Yeah, it was eye-opening, but I was really kind of chilled with it all. I'd done a lot of homework, which I know has been well reported, but you know, I did 7 separate trips before my first year, all within that first year. So from beginning of January to the end of April of 2014, which was my first TT, 7 different trips, 2 days every single time, and I would do at least 5 laps a day in a car. 5 laps sound like a lot, but it's an hour a lap. So it's 5 hours on day 1, 5 hours on day 2. So at least, and that was the minimum. So I was doing at least 10 laps every time. I did 7 trips. So at least 70 laps, so 70 hours of actual physically driving around the course, just in a little 1 litre Fiesta, which got a good thrashing. And then obviously in between all that, I was then watching onboards. I've searched through quite a few to start with, and I actually found one from 2013, so the year before. It was a Thursday night practice lap from Gary Johnson. Really clean lap. He doesn't catch anyone. He doesn't get passed by anyone. It wasn't ridiculously fast. It was 128 mile an hour standing start. You could hear everything, every gear change. Everything that he did with the bike, you can see it and you can hear it. So once I found that lap, I just watched that lap over and over and over and over and over and over. And then from driving the course, I made some plans in my head of, do you know what, Gary's 4th through this corner, and 4th looks like it would just be ridiculous. So I was doing it in 3rd. Yeah, I'd already made a few plans and gone kind of, now I'm just going to come back another gear and I'm going to do this here and I'm going to brake there and I'm not going to do what he did there because I think that's too much. And, you know, I just kind of made a bit of a an attack plan, I guess, for what I was going to do. And my first lap, your first lap is always behind an instructor. So the first lap with open roads is behind an instructor. So I followed Milky. Was not a massively fast lap, but it was about 100 odd mile an hour. And then they go, right, off you go. You know, by the time you come back in, the rest of the paddock's already gone on their practice lap. So we just filled the tank up and just go and do 2 laps. My first lap was 109 miles an hour, and my second lap was 115. So, you know, I was fairly well on it pretty quick. By lap 5, I did 119.6. So I was nearly at 120 mile an hour within 5 laps. And actually, Paul Phillips, who's the TT organizer and rider liaison, he does a lot with the TT as part of the motorsport department inside the Isle of Man government. He actually came to me after that lap 5 and was like, mate, you really need to slow down. You're trying too hard and all the rest of it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're on about. And he was like, do you not know how fast you've gone? I went, no. I told the team I don't want to know. I've not looked at any timesheets. I've not looked at any speeds. I literally have no idea. And this was in between my lap 5 and lap 7, if you like, so while they were fueling the bike up. And as soon as he realized that I wasn't actually pushing to try and do the times, I was just doing it. He kind of backed off and was like, all right, just chill out, have fun, enjoy it, and stay safe, basically. So, it was a different. It was good. It was good. I just enjoyed it. I don't know. I just fit in that environment really easy. You know, it's really laid back, the roads, compared to Bsb, which is very corporate, very high pressure all the time. You know, the roads is very, very different.
Now, how do you feel like on a racetrack, you know, when you 0.3 or 0.5 of a second off, to try and find that is hard. But when you do find it, you feel like you found it. To find half a second, you feel like you've gone half a second faster. It actually feels like oh, there we go. Yeah, it's getting darker now. Eh? There we go.
It's getting dark. Oh, there we go. Look, you can see me.
There we go. That's much better. So yeah, to find that time on a short circuit, you feel like you find half a second. Sometimes half a second feels like you went 2 seconds faster. What is the difference on the TT course between like 126 mile an hour lap and your 135? I mean, do you feel it when you coming to the start finish line? Do you go, yeah, I know this is going to be a lot faster than 30 mile an hour, or is it not much difference?
It depends, you know. Sometimes it's a bit it can work both ways. Sometimes you think that you've tried really, really hard and it's a slower lap, a bit like what you can get on a short circuit. You know, the harder you try, sometimes the slower you go. And then other times, you know, you feel like you've been it was an all right lap, but I was slow here and I was slow there, and actually it ends up being a really fast lap. The 135 mile an hour lap, when I was coming on to the start and finish, was I really thinking how fast it was? I probably wasn't, to be fair. I was just doing what I felt that, or what I knew I could do. You know, I didn't play all my cards on the table straight away. I always kept Dean within touching distance, but didn't really kind of show too much. I was always fast over the mountain. That was something that was really apparent over the two, or at least the race week of 2018. But I also knew in my head that I had at least a few more seconds if I wanted it. There was a lot of places where I thought, well, I'm still chilled there and I'm still chilled there, and I can just nick a bit here and I can nick a bit there. And you only win the race at the slowest possible speed. You know, there's no point in winning a race by a minute, because it doesn't make any difference to winning it by 2 seconds, you know. So, and also the TT, the kind of war of attrition on bikes and stuff is high, you know, because it's such a demanding track on the bike as well as the rider. You know, the bikes, you know, don't always like it, and they don't always make the finish. So you don't need to be leading every lap. You don't need to be out front breaking lap records every lap. So as long as you're somewhere within touching distance going on to the last lap, then that's enough for me. You know, generally speaking, I was quite happy being between 2 and 5 seconds behind him, because I thought, well, if he drops out on lap 4, it doesn't make any difference anyway. I'm in front of third by a good chunk, so I can just sit here and not necessarily cruise, but just use my head, save the engine where I needed to, and all the rest of it. When we got to that final lap, and it was like, okay, you've got 2 seconds. And I knew he was always really, really strong, to Balaf in particular, but also up to Ramsey. He was really, really strong. And he was stronger than me, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was on my limit with the bike, with where I was and how the bike was set up and where I was comfortable. I was already on my limit. So I knew he was always going to pull again. And I got it, I think, to within 2 seconds on the start line, which meant that he was always going to be about 5 seconds-ish by the time we got to Balaf. I think he was actually a bit more. I think he was about 6 seconds at Balaf. And I had my head down. At that point, I was like, well, now it's all cards on the table. Let's just pull everything out the stops, you know. And I managed to have a fairly good run after that. I got caught up with a lot of traffic at the start of that lap, but towards the end, you know, or from the Balaf kind of section, if you like, all the way to Ramsey, I had a really good run. I only had to pass Connor, I think, at that time. And I'd actually closed the gap already from kind of, I think it was 5.7 seconds at Balaf. I closed it to 2 seconds at Ramsey. And I don't actually get a board until I get to the bungalow, which is actually quite a few. It's basically the end of the next section is when I get my Ramsey board. That's just the way I'd had it planned. You know, I absolutely had my head down and I was absolutely on the knuckle with where I wanted to be. I was white line to white line, absolutely everywhere, right across that top mountain piece or top mountain section. When I got to the bungalow, which is nearly the end of the mountain section, if you like, I had the Ramsey board, which said P2 -2, which meant I was 2 seconds behind at Ramsey. And I knew I'd had a really good run over the mountain to that section. And in my head, I was like, well, I should be now. In my head, I thought I should probably be leading, which actually I was. I think I was leading only by 0.8 for a second, but I'd gained, you know, another 2.8 seconds on him from Ramsey to that point, and that's the first half of the mountain section. So I just needed to keep my head in the game. I was still point to point all the way down to the crag and past the crag and through Brandish, Hilbury, them real fast sections. I was just like, I can just gain another meter or two on the brakes. I can just be a bit braver on the throttle. I've got a bit of room to use a bit more speed on the exit, and that's all I did, you know. And we ended up winning the race by just 2 seconds, I think it was, in the end. And yeah, you only go as fast as you need to go to win the race. You know, that's it. And TT very much is a head game as much as anything. So, but when I finished that lap, I knew I'd given all of it. You know, that was me pretty much on the limit for everything. So that was as fast as I could have gone then. Obviously, there was a lot of back markers. If there'd not been the back markers, I think we probably would have seen maybe 136 mile an hour at the TT. But it wasn't to be on that day, and who knows what the future brings.
Training-wise, physical training-wise, did you have to change a lot once you had committed to TT? And do you think racing the TT, if I look at Peter Hickman pre-TT and post-TT, do you think it's made you a better all-round rider? If I look at your World Superbike results that year, very impressive on the big level. And to me, since TT, Peter Hickman's, you know, been running at the front of Bsb a lot more consistently. So training-wise, did you step it up? And do you think it's benefited you in the Bsb stuff?
Training-wise, actually, no, not really. It's never been a big part of my career. I don't like going to the gym. I don't like staring at myself in a mirror and training and working out. I would much rather do a sport or do something like mountain biking or cycling or something along them lines. I've never struggled with fitness particularly, even when I've been heavier in my career. Like last year, I was actually quite a bit heavy and quite a bit bigger as a person. I still never struggled to get to an end of a race. You know, even places like Alton Park, which is probably the most demanding track that we have in the UK here. It's, you know, I never struggled with it. But you know, for the TT, I never changed anything. I never did anything different. What the TT has done for me is open doors. It opened doors to better bikes, better teams, because they wanted me for the TT. So the spin-off wanted me for the TTs. I would always say, well, I'll do the TT for you, but only if you let me have a BSB ride on a proper bike. So because the pull of the TT was so big, it meant that I could end up riding a good bike at BSB. And then that just meant that I ended up getting further to the front. I felt good about myself. I was winning. Whenever you're winning, you're always up anyway. Doesn't matter where you win. You know, if we went and did a kart race with the team before the weekend, if I won the race, which obviously I should hope I would, you know, it makes you feel good about yourself. So then you're on a high already, you know. So when I've come back from the TT and you've managed to get a win or 2 wins or whatever it may be, you're in a good place. In your head, you're in a good place. So you just think, you know, you almost feel invincible a little bit. So everything just becomes a lot easier, and you get them better rides, and the better rides mean you have more of a chance of actually winning. So, and that's really what's happened over the last few years from 14 onwards. I got to sit on a good bike and after the TT, and yeah, I managed to win a race that year at BSB. I was on the podium. I was there in the mix all the time, and then I've not really looked back since, to be fair. And it's down to doing the TT.
There was the one year, I can't remember what year it was, but you were on you were on a Honda CBR 1000, and it was like a weird color. It was like a purple color, where you were actually really close to like challenging for that BSB title. Do you think that's been your best BSB year today? If I'm just going on personal experience, watching my BSB DVDs, Peter Hickman that year was like really, really on it.
There's been a couple of years. So 2000, excuse me, 2011 was the first year that I rode a proper bike actually, and got on a bike that was actually capable, which is before my TT career.
Yeah.
It was a Tyco Honda. It was HM Plant Honda from the year before. It was Josh Brooks's bike from the year before. I actually won my first race sorry, I didn't win my first race, but I got my first podiums that year. I actually led some races that year. I was always in the kind of battle once I got my head around the bike and electronics, because we were allowed electronics at that time. And that really kind of, I guess in my head, gave me the confidence to go, do you know what? If you get the bike that everyone else has got, you actually can win races, you know, and it's that self-belief that you definitely do need. And again, it's difficult to get it when you haven't got the bike underneath you. And that year I definitely had a bike that was capable. I then actually had a couple of years of being really bad. The next year after on the Kawasaki did not go right at all. I only did 3 rounds with them, got sacked, funnily enough, because I did a World Superbike round on a Suzuki, but that's a different story. I finished the year on the BM, and I actually did all right on the BM. The BM was very, very unproven at that time, 2012. It was only the second generation of the bike, the S1000RR. I was in the top 10 with it pretty much straight away, which was good. But we didn't challenge for any podiums or wins. The year after was the GB Moto Honda, which was the purple kind of white bike. I had some flashes of being okay on it, but struggled with it overall. I think I finished 11th in the championship that year. And then that's when I struggled to even have a bike. So I didn't get a ride for the year after. Then I went to the TT. That all happened. Unfortunately, Simon Andrews lost his life at the Northwest 200 that year. He was riding for the RAF Honda team at the time. And they came to me at the TT and said, look, we would like to continue at BSB. We don't really know what we want to do, because they were really, really close to Simon. They weren't sure what they wanted to do with the team owners and stuff. Where the head was all over the place. Obviously, you know, it was still very fresh in everyone's minds. We all missed the next round. But then after that, they said, look, actually, we've decided we do want to do it, and we would like to do something with yourself. I got to ride his bike for the rest of the year. It was just a one-man team. That was when we won at Cadwell Park in the pouring down rain. The bike was really, really good. It didn't have any top end, but it was strong overall. And again, I was in that fight. I was in the fight for podiums. I was top 6 most of the time, towards the end of the year at least. We then moved to a BM the year after and was strong. But the year after that was probably the first time that people really took notice that I could do it. And I got into the official Kawasaki team at the time, which was JG Speedfit Kawasaki. My teammates were James Ellison and Leon Haslam. So there's 2 really big names, especially inside of BSB, but also from World Championship and even Motogp, both of them. So for me to be in that team with them was a massive opportunity, you know. Yeah. And at the first round of the year, I should have finished on the podium in race 1, and we had a technical problem. But in race 2, I beat Shaky, you know, and I beat both my teammates. I beat Shaky. I beat everyone on the grid and won race 2. And I think it made people kind of stand up and go, he's not just a TT rider. He can actually do BSB as well. And that year I won 2 races. I had a couple of podiums. And again, I was always in that fight. I missed out on the showdown by like that much. Yeah. I think it was 2 points I missed out on. You know, I was part of the only team to ever be on the podium with 3 riders, because we had all 3 of us were on the podium at Alton Park, and that's never happened before. It was really, really cool to be part of that. I think that was my probably best year to date up to that point. The year after was strong again with the Smiths team. Finished 4th in the championship with them the year after. Won races, was on the podium again, and again, it's that snowball effect of being. I managed to get onto a proper bike in a really good team, and then everything just kind of rolled on from there, you know. And then we finished 4th in 17. I was 5th in 2018 in the British Superbike Championship. I was 6th in 19. Going the wrong way, really, isn't it? Going backwards, but yeah, you know, I'm thereabouts from that point onwards. Last year was a real tough year for me, but yeah, sometimes you have them years, and we just need to shake your head, forget about it, and get on again.
And move on, yeah. We've got Ati Herbst here in South Africa, who's like a 2-stroke wizard and collector. Your early years, which 2-stroke did you enjoy riding the most?
For early years, 2-stroke, did you say?
Yeah, in your early years, what two-stroke did you enjoy riding the most?
So I didn't actually get to ride many two-strokes, and I'm a massive two-stroke lover. But mini motos was where I started. So they're two-stroke 39cc Polini 911R. That's what I had. It was a weapon. Loved it. I wish I still had it now. And then I rode an Aprilia Super Teen RS 125, which is a Formula 125. So it was a road Aprilia in the Aprilia Challenge. So it was for riders, I think, from 11 or 12 years old up to about 17. Ran for a few years. Lots of big names have come through it. Chaz Davies, Casey Stoner, Craig Jones, Tom Sykes, all them kind of people all came through that. So yeah, it was a really good championship to be in. But from that point onwards, I jumped straight onto four strokes because my dad was basically like, well, you're already 6 foot, and I was only 15 or something at the time. It was like, unfortunately for you, as much as you want to go Grand Prix 125 and 250 racing as it was at the time, he's like, that ain't happening. You're too tall. So he basically pushed me onto the four strokes, and that was the route I ended up having to take.
Last couple of questions for you. We've got my brother asking, you mentioned your first bike that you saved up and hid from your dad. What was that first bike?
It was an AR50 Kawasaki. That was a two-stroke as well, wasn't it? Yeah, an AR50 Kawasaki. It was in a wheelbarrow full of bits. I paid 50 quid for it. And I think I paid 50 quid and I swapped my radio-controlled aeroplane at the same time as well. So, yeah, it was a heap of junk. I hid it around the back of the house, and then 2 weeks later realised I still had no idea how I was going to build it. So then I kind of plucked the courage up to tell my dad, and he didn't give me a smack, to be fair, which I'm surprised about. But he actually helped me build it and showed me how to build it. And that was the bike that I rode around. My next door neighbor had like a good few acres out the back of his house, so I just used to ride around there. Later on, bought an 80cc AR 80 engine for it with a 6-speed box, put that into that chassis, and everything moved on from there.
Michael Harworth comments here, get him to tell you what happened to the bike at the end of 2011. Yeah. Honestly, it's funny.
Yeah, he would say that. I'll pay him back later. Ah, dear. Thanks, Michael. That was the Tyco bike that I rode. That year, it was the electronics. The bike was a HM Plant bike from the year before. But the team had upgraded to a fly-by-wire system on it later in the year, which came from the SMR team. And how it ran then, it was like a cable that then ran to a potentiometer. Yes. So you still pulled like a cable in your hand. And then it went from then it told the ECU what I'd asked for. Then the ECU would then tell the bike what to give it. And then we could make all sorts of different strategies up, from traction control to lean angle and everything. Anyway, it gets really complicated. That system, the cables were really tight, and depending on how the team had rebuilt them, if you actually turn the steering all the way to the right to the absolute lock, every now and again it would actually open the throttle slightly. Not a lot. Sometimes it'd be 2%. Sometimes it could be a bit more. And that particular day was really bad. And this is my full excuse, by the way. I've got this whole kind of big long list of excuse for this mistake, because it wasn't a mistake. It was a problem with the bike. But anyway, that particular day, it was really bad. I remember coming to the grid, and I think I was 9th on the grid at the time. So I'd come down the middle of the grid. I had to turn left and then turn right into my grid spot. And as I did that, I turned the steering and got to the lock. Because you never get, on a race bike, you never get to the lock unless you're actually going slow. You know, on a race bike, you're never anywhere near it. I got to the lock stop, and the bike revved its head off like a full ram as I did that. And I was like, one, it's a good job I had the clutch pulled in. And two, everyone turned around to look at me as if to go, what are you doing? I'm like, that wasn't me. That's the bike that did that. Anyway, it was the last round of the championship. We'd had a really, really good year. Like I said, I'd led some races. I'd had some podiums. I was always in the fight. It was the first year that I'd actually had that. The bike was awesome. Team owner was mega. It was only a private team. Ian Woolcott, his name is. We're friends again now. Not after this race, we weren't. But basically, I finished the race, got away with it. We'd had a really nice livery for that day as well. We did something special for the last day. The whole bike was chrome, so it was complete chrome wrap on the bike. With the sponsor Tyco written through it. It looked really, really cool. We only had one fairing like that. And I think I'd crashed the bike maybe 2 times all year, 3 times, maybe tops. Like I'd hardly crashed it. I'm not known as much of a crasher anyway, but I'd hardly crashed the bike all year, not done really any damage to it. I finished the race and I've been doing some really big wheelies down the back straight or down the back straight behind the pits at Brands Hatch, which is the John Cooper straight. And then when you come out of there, out of Surtees onto the proper main back straight, there's always a load of photographers on the right-hand side, and it's a left-hand corner, and you go up a hill and up and over the top. So I've been getting cockier all weekend, basically, is what had happened. And I started to pick the bike up right on the side of the tyre, so I still had my knee on the deck, and I was picking the bike up then to wheelie and stand up over the top of it. And then as you do that, you always turn the steering. And I hadn't really thought about it too much, but I'd finished that race, the last race of the year. I'd had a good race, come through that corner, literally picked it up further length over than I had done all weekend, picked the bike up, stood right up, and I got the bike right up onto the balance point, literally to the point where it's nearly going over the back. And I looked over to the photographers and turned the steering to counteract which way I was going, and it just opened the throttle by nearly 20%. But I was already here, so it just went from underneath me. And just a full flip. I obviously had to let go of the thing, and it absolutely wrote the bike off. I did more damage in that one crash than I had done all year by a long way. It did the forks, the swing arm, both wheels, the fork caps, the dash, the tank, like you name it, it was trashed. It did like 30 or 40 grand's worth of damage. Shaky actually came and picked me up because he'd won the championship that year. I think he won the championship. He might have lost the championship. I can't remember, but he picked me up and he was like, "Have you just flipped that bike?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was absolutely pissing himself the whole way back. He was like, "I've done that so often and no one's ever seen it because it's always been on road tests or whatever." But yeah. So yeah, it didn't really go down too well, to be fair. But yeah, there's a famous Mike. I've just seen Michael's put. He's going to post the famous picture. But there is someone who actually managed to get a picture as the bike's gone from underneath me. The bike's actually upside down. I think I'm still holding on to it, and my boots have just touched the floor, and there's smoke coming off my boots because I must be doing probably 80, 90 mile an hour. So somebody got that picture and posted it, which was not great for me at the time. But we can laugh about it now. It's all right.
Yeah, when you're a TT winner, you can laugh about these things. Another question here from Rich: did you ever get your leathers back from the scumbag that nicked them? Was it Truxton?
Unfortunately, not. No, I have no idea who it was. But yeah, they actually came through the window of the motorhome. So it was a really hot weekend that weekend, and I'd left the window on the side of it. I'd left it kind of open, and my leathers are always hung up at the front. Never really thought anybody would ever try and nick your leathers. It's not really a very common thing, but they'd actually lifted themselves up through the side of the motorhome through the window. They didn't actually come in properly. They just literally slid the window open more and unhooked it off the hanger and nicked it out the side. So because the door was locked, that was what kind of threw me, really. I didn't even notice to start with because the door was still locked. It was not like somebody had broken in, but yeah, it was. I never got them back. No, so I don't know who's got them, but they'll probably end up on eBay one day, won't they? Another 10 years from now or something, somebody will say, here's the leathers.
My last question for you, Peter. It's been absolutely fabulous. We've had you for a long time now. And this last question is from Ryan Demeser, who also posted it on our Facebook page. And it's a really good one, I think, to end off. How intense is the Macau GP from a rider's perspective with your head on the Armco barriers? And how does it compare to the TT? I mean, it's road racing, but in many ways, it's two completely different facets.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. It's between a road race and a BSB race. Again, you tend to find a lot of BSB riders that do go there very well, go very fast. I would say, yeah, it's a mix of both. It's a road race, but with an element of BSB in it, and that's why the BSB riders tend to go well there. It's a cool track. What you don't really understand from watching it on TV, it's really undulating. There's a lot of really high rises in it from turn kind of 4 onwards. Like the incline's massive. It's called, funnily enough, it's aptly named Hospital Hill. But you go up there and it's so steep. And then you drop back down again in the middle of the track. You drop down further, then you come back up again, then you drop back down. Like it's a really technical track. It's 6.4 kilometers, so about 4 miles long. It's a really technical place, but it's a cool place to be. Just overall, anyway, the culture over there is different. You know, you're in really kind of the heart of Asia, if you like, with the massive casinos that are at Macau. I mean, Macau actually turns over 7 times more than Vegas. So when you go into them casinos and you see all these Chinese people gambling, you've literally never seen anything like it in your life. It's a really interesting place to go, and I always enjoy riding there. They're always really hospitable. You know, the people there are really mega about the whole event, and the fact their city gets closed for 4 or 5 days. You know, they're not bothered about it. You know, they get to watch some racing and they all really enjoy it, and it's just a cool place to be.
Well, Peter, I'm sure you've seen by all the comments on the side, it's been absolutely amazing having you. Like I said, you've got a huge following here in South Africa. Stephen Berry, thanks, Peter. Keep up the good work and come visit SA. Sure, we can party harder than Colin Edwards. So, yeah, I think you need to get yourself to South Africa. Your British pounds turn into millions here in South Africa. You can literally come with £10 and live like a king.
It's one of the few places I've not actually managed to come to yet. So yeah, eventually I definitely do want to come to South Africa. Obviously, I know AJ already. But yeah, I have a few friends that are already South African. So at some point, I'll definitely be over. 100%. I need to be riding at Kyalami as well. So you know, another iconic track. So I need to come and have a blast around there sometime. So fingers crossed, sometime soon. Yeah,
you just get yourself here. We'll get you a bike sorted. We'll get you everything sorted. Half your cricket team is South African anyway, so you might as well come and do it. Nice little dig there at the end. But yeah, Peter, the best of luck for the season. Good luck with your new team. We're going to be following you. I certainly have been a huge fan for a very long time. I hope we get to see you at the TT next year. I hope you have a fantastic year. And I hope we can get you at least in that top 3 or possibly on the top step of a BSB championship. I think it's where you belong. And I think, like everyone's pretty much saying here, it's what you deserve. And just keep up the good work and carry on being the awesome Peter Hickman that we've all come to know and love.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And I hope you've all enjoyed it. And, yeah, thanks for the interview. Been mega.
Awesome, Peter. Keep well and all the best, man. Thank you to everybody for joining us. Remember, I will download this and I will put it up on the Motor Rider World YouTube channel, and I'll post it on Facebook as well. So from everyone, from my side to everyone, thank you for joining again. Big thanks to Peter Hickman, and we'll catch up with you soon.